Hello, welcome to another LessonPix instructional video. Our new grid books are great when you need a custom layout that our templates don't handle, or when you're creating a multi-page material such as a tabbed communication book. Let's get started. Head to the Your LessonPix tab and click on the Grid Books icon in the upper right, right under Play Tools. This will launch the editor. We'll choose New Book since we're starting from scratch. First, let's make something simple, a visual support for the book The Wheels on the Bus, laid out just the way we want. We'll put Wheels on the Bus in the title and leave the default 4x5 grid in the center. You can also add headers, footers, and sidebars by clicking the Add buttons. Sidebars and headers are great when you need a different number of rows or columns than the main grid. Don't worry, you can always change the layout later and you won't lose any work. Now we'll hit New Page to start adding our symbols. Here you see a blank grid of 4 rows and 5 columns. We'll search for Wheels on the Bus and click the category that comes up first. Here you can see we're browsing the Wheels on the Bus image category. Let's grab a bus and drag it to the grid. You can double-click on the grid or right-click and choose the Edit Cell menu to change the text and colors. We'll change the text to The Bus instead of just Bus. You can also change the background or border of each cell here, but we'll leave that for later. We want this bus to be the main image, so let's resize this cell to take up most of the page. Now let's add some elements of the song to point to as we sing along. We'll drag over the wheel, the wipers, and all the other elements. If we want to reorder them, we can just drag them around and they'll move. If we change our mind and we want to choose a different baby's picture, we can just drop it on top. Notice that the old image is moved to the scratch pad. This is kind of like a trash bin, but you can also use it to move symbols between pages and things like that. You can drag things there yourself if you want to clear a cell and drag them back if you'd like. Let's edit these symbols to all have the repeatable text on the bus. Before we generate our book, let's show one more thing. Let's resize our bus image and merge the 3 cells that are exposed. Now we have an empty cell with no image below the bus. Whenever you have an empty cell, you can double-click on it or right-click and choose Add Text. Now we can add text that will fill the cell without adding an image. We'll make it yellow text on a black background. The sing-along cell is probably not what we really want. Let's use the Undo tool to back out our changes. You can use Redo as well if we go too far. There are unlimited undos and redo in the system, but they are reset if you leave the editor. This looks great. Let's create our grid book by clicking the green Create Book button. We'll give the title Sing-Along Boards. This is the title for the whole book, not the page, and it'll be handy to find the material after it's made and to share it in the Sharing Center. We'll choose rounded tabs, but there are also square tabs and an option for no tabs if you don't need them or if you want to add store-bought tabs. We're using letter paper. We want our text on the top, a medium border and spacing, and we'll choose the font Century Gothic, which is nice and clean. You can also choose to hide any unused cells and whether or not to round the corners on your cells. It has a lot of options, but thankfully it will store them all so you aren't starting over later. Let's hit Create Book and let the generator run. Here's our generated book. Let's download it as a PDF. It looks great. Back on the materials page, you'll see that this book works just like any LessonPix material with a few additions. First, notice that where the symbols are usually listed to add to the tray, you've got 2 different sections. The lower part is simple. It's just got a separate Load All button for each page of your book. Here we have just one page named Wheels on the Bus, but when there are more, they'll each be in their own section. As always, you can clear your tray and load the pictures from each page to make supporting materials via our traditional materials wizard. The other new addition is the green Open Book button. This will reopen the grid book editor exactly as it was when this material was created. Notice that everything has been saved, the text, colors, sizes, even the settings and the Create Book dialog. And we didn't have to remember to save anything. The act of creating the book kept a snapshot of the layout and settings, which can always be reloaded later from the generated material page. This is a great first page, but notice this is a book tool, not a page tool. Let's add some more pages. Under Page, we can choose New Page and name it Humpty Dumpty with the same default grid. Clicking New Page, you can see our empty Humpty Dumpty grid where we can start collecting new symbols. Or we can go back to the Wheels on the Bus page and choose Duplicate Page to get an exact copy to keep things consistent. The new page is called Copy of Wheels on the Bus, but we can change that and add a new story. Notice that undo and redo also work on adding and changing pages, so don't be afraid to try things out. You can always clean it up. Here's a finalized grid book with a title page to let the students choose a song and many pages of supporting materials. We've been creative about the layouts just to show how versatile the editor is. When we create a book, we'll get a single PDF file with all our songs in one, easy to print and manage. At the bottom, notice that each page has a section for its symbols so you can load any of them into the tray to make bingo games, flashcards, etc. Now that we've got the hang of grid books, let's take it to the next level. Let's make a tabbed communication book, and while we're at it, see how to leverage your existing materials and move them into the grid book editor. Here's a core vocabulary board made by Amy Wright from Alaska. I found it in the Sharing Center. Looking at her other materials, you can see she's got modified boards for each setting that are probably used as a core and fringe strategy. Making and maintaining books of this kind is exactly what our new tool is for. Going back to the main board, load the symbols from this material to the tray. I've also marked this material as a favorite to show how that can be helpful too. Now we go back to our grid books. Notice that our last book is still loaded. LessonPix tries to keep a copy of the book you're working on even if you leave the editor, but be careful. If you log out or close your browser, it will be cleared. We'll start with a blank layout and add a title of Core Vocabulary to the first page. Here's a snapshot of the material we're remaking. Notice it has 8 columns and 5 rows. Let's set those values here and hit New Page. Now we've got to load all the symbols. Luckily, LessonPix makes this easy. Click on the Tray tab and you'll see the images we loaded from the material. You can load them all into the tray left to right, top to bottom by clicking Load All. Let's undo that and I'll show you another option. Under Browse, you'll find Image Categories, Recent Materials, Favorite Materials, and Save Trays. Choosing Favorite Materials, we can find our Core Vocabulary board and load the images from this tab. Super easy. Looking at the original, the only thing left is to get the colors right. Prior to grid books, LessonPix didn't store any colors or positions with our materials, so the colors are missing. We'll have to add them. Luckily, that's pretty quick. Looking at the snapshot, you can see that the first column is yellow. Let's set the first cell to a yellow background and update the cell. Now, let's save some time. Notice that when you're dragging a cell, the tip at the bottom tells you that if you hold the Alt key, you'll paint the style instead of moving the cell. When I hold Alt and drag the first symbol, notice that there's a paintbrush icon, and when I let it go, it drops the colors onto the new cell, not the image or text. This works with resizing too, so we can hold down the Alt key and quickly paint our first column yellow. The next section's mostly green, so let's set that too. Since we can now, let's set the border color too. We'll hold down Alt and paint over all these verbs. Look how easy. Here's our finished core page with all of the colors matching Amy's original board. Before we generate our book, let's add a context-specific fringe page to make a true book. Here's Amy's classroom communication board. Notice that the right half is all white and is full of classroom materials and concepts. Let's make this a favorite and go back to the grid book editor. Because we made the classroom board a favorite, we can now browse the favorite materials and choose it. Now we'll choose Duplicate on our current page and rename it to Classroom. We can't use Load All here because there's no empty cells and lots of the pictures are already on the board. So we copy the ones we want over by hand. The old symbols will move to the scratch pad. Here it is all done. Let's create our book. We'll set the title to Core and Fringe Book and tweak the settings, and then click Create Book. Let's see that PDF. It looks great. If you ever need to modify the book or add new pages, just click on Open Book and you'll be right back where you left off. We hope you love our grid books as much as we do, and we can't wait to see what you make with them. Thanks for spending the time learning about this powerful tool, and as always, good luck and have fun.